focus on small incremental steps, not these quantum leaps which leave a lot of gaps in the back end. I honestly, Ms. Matthew, I love that phrase. So welcome Mr. Aditya Mishra, who is the chairman of the Land Ports Authority of India, to deliver his inaugural address. Mr. Mishra is well known amongst this audience over here, but for those who might want to know a little bit more about him, Mr. Mishra has been in the Land Ports Authority of India as chairman since December 2019. He's an IPS officer of the 1989 batch of Uttar Pradesh cadre, and he served in UP and the Border Security Force and the Service Selection Board with the Government of India during the course of his distinguished career. Mr. Mishra holds also a postgraduate degree in economics from the Delhi School of Economics. But from our point of view, we have to share with you, and it's something that we have also acknowledged in our report, that really this whole report, this whole study would have been unimaginable to us if it wasn't for Mr. Mishra's very gracious and patient hearing of our very initial thoughts about gender mainstreaming and land ports. And he's the one who suggested that let's do a stakeholder consultation webinar and see what others also think about it. And that was really the beginning of our journey. And Nisha will elaborate upon it in greater detail when she talks about her findings.
Good evening once again, and even though the study has been carried out by CREAR, but I think we are the main beneficiary. So I must thank you personally, all of you, for being here and sparing your time today. A little bit about land ports, because that's the area which is also a little confusing for some of us, as much as the other part, which is gender mainstreaming. Land ports is a relatively new concept after the Kargil war, when India people sat back to decide and look further at the security infrastructure of the country. This was thought that all the transit points on the land borders of India, which is about 15,000 kilometers, and approximately about 90 active transit points with our 7 neighbors. So it was thought that let's reinforce them simultaneously as we strengthen the non-transit points. So the rest of the border should be secured so that nobody is able to move through them, whereas the transit point should be facilitated so that people find it more convenient to move through them. And that's how this concept of integrated checkpost came about in, I think, around 2002, 2003, when they started discussing it. So along the way, when they started making ICPs, they thought that let's create a body which will not only put it in place, but also manage it. And that's how the Land Ports Authority came about in 2012. And slowly we have moved on from a nomenclature of ICP, which is Integrated Checkposts, to something called Land Ports, which is a hybrid of seaports and airports. So that's the basic concept of land port in the context of our country. As I said, 90 odd locations. We started off with the biggest and I think strategically more important from India's point of view with respect to its neighbors. So we started off with about 23. We are already in the process of doing DPRs for the next 25. And there is a strong thinking in the government that we should ASAP take over all these locations and at least start managing them, reorganizing them before we actually get into the process of building the right kind of infrastructure, because that takes a little time. So with the 23 that we had targeted in the beginning, I think 11 are now functional. in due course some more will become functional, and it is interesting. It's more interesting to operationalize a new location and see the dynamics of its being set up with respect to the local stakeholders, how it changes their perception and how things improve. So that's the most interesting and satisfying part, at least personally for me. Coming to the concept of gender mainstreaming, I'm sure all of you are familiar and a lot has been spoken about it just now. In the National Trade Facilitation Action Plan, this, as Sanjana Ma'am has said, is point number 27. And after each of these points in the action plan, which is about 60 odd points, they have identified the stakeholders who should be responsible for implementing it. And unfortunately, in point number 27, LPI was not mentioned. So we felt a little left out about this, and we thought that we should take it up on our own and see how best we can work on this agenda, because from our perspective it was an important agenda. Most of these land ports, as you understand, are very marginalized locations far away from mainstream, and recently we inaugurated our Dauki land port, and some of you traveled to that location, and bad roads, far away, no place to stay, bad transportation, so a lot of issues. So expecting them to be the most ideal place for implementing all these policies is a far-fetched thought. But all the same, we start working on them. And as again Sanjana Madam has pointed out, this is this report which came about after a lot of initial discussions. And one of the most important thing was, which was again organized by ICRIAR, was the webinar just after COVID period, and we thought, let's at least start getting the thoughts in place. And that webinar was useful. We got a lot of inputs from there, and then we started implementing some of these in a systematic manner. So this document also, which is yet to be unveiled, is I'm sure is a very comprehensive document, and it will be like a beacon for us to guide us on this particular agenda item, and I'm looking forward to it. Not only the issues which we keep discussing regularly, but also issues which are a little more futuristic. So in the morning only we started our one training, and I was talking to the audience there, and I said that in the first trade action facilitation plan, LPI was a little quiet because we are still getting there. In the second one, hopefully we have achieved most of the targets that were set for us, including the dwell time, where I think we have improved quite a lot. And in the third action plan, which hopefully would be launched next year, we hope to be the front runners, and we will like to make our port so advanced and futuristic that we become the model for the rest of the other two kinds of ports at least. So one of the things I think is digitization, and that has again been mentioned just now by Matthew, that digitization is an important aspect. And once we digitize, then who's sitting behind the chair becomes immaterial, and that's a big leveler. So digitization we are focusing on, and we have already started our process of digitizing all the land ports, and as far as possible all the activities, with the purpose of integrating it well with the other systems that are coming up in the country for logistics. That's another aspect, at least on these ports, where which creates differentiates on the basis of physical strength. So mechanization, first important thing we are doing at Petropol, where we do a lot of transshipment, because on the land borders it's mostly bulk cargo. It's not containerized. Very small, minuscule amount of cargo is containerized. So a bulk cargo does need shifting from transshipment from the Indian trucks to the foreign trucks and vice versa. So there we are trying to build a system of conveyor belts so that the physical strength part is replaced by mechanization. So these two aspects we are focusing on, and hopefully in the coming few months that will also act as a neutral factor, neutralizing the effect of gender difference. Other than that, of course, a lot of steps NPI is trying to take, and some of the things have been mentioned. In the document, I think while it was being done, we were about to implement the Dokiland port, and there we were very sensitive to the community, the local community, picking them up, selecting them, training them to handle most of the activities of the land port. We give a lot of importance to the local population, and I'm sure to a large extent our working at Dokiland port is now very, very gender neutral. Other than this, as you all know, land ports are not only points of trade but also points of travel and transit. There again we try to create facilities and so that the place is welcoming to all genders. And as we progress on this path, I'm sure we'll be looking forward to this document. We have already held some initial discussions with World Bank to create a toolkit kind of thing for us for the gender mainstreaming, so that whenever we start a new land port, we start with a environment which is positive to all the genders. So I will thank ICRIER for this very comprehensive work, and also to UPS for supporting it, and I'm sure we are looking forward to this document, and I'm sure that in the coming months we will make our best effort to implement it in word and spirit, so that land ports become, I would say, become model for other ports as far as this issue is concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra, for your very insightful remarks. Now, enough has been said about point number 27. It's ingrained in our minds now what action point 27 is in the National Trade Facilitation Action Plan. And so basically it includes the promotion of gender inclusiveness in trade. And even though it was 66% in the survey, I think it was very significant, because the National Trade Facilitation Action Plan actually gives reference to that survey and therefore includes gender mainstreaming. So in that sense, I think it was a very significant report for us. You also mentioned that Land Port Authority was left out, but I've gone over it with a tooth comb, and there is also in the stakeholder thing it says any other volunteers. So when we saw that, we felt it was very important to take this issue to different stakeholders, and it was very important to socialize this amongst various stakeholders so that they could take this forward. Now, also this point number 27 has a much larger significance than meets the eye. It lays the ground for gender mainstreaming in India's foreign trade policy, and it also for including gender in India's FTAs, for instance in the UK, Canada, and EU. In fact, when the discussions were on, the Commerce Ministry actually referred to the National Trade Facilitation Action Plan, point number 27, and said that if we are doing this already, how can we not have it in in the FTAs. And that's how important it is. It also dovetails with the focus on gender equality in WTO's 12th Ministerial Conference Outcome Document, to which all WTO members are signatories, and there is a reference and focus on gender equality in the NCL statement. So basically, this is a top-down approach, and it really sets an example for gender mainstreaming in all economic policy spheres. Again, this is very important because in many countries in the world today, gender mainstreaming is taken into account across economic policy, so horizontally and vertically. So this is really setting the stage for India to enter into gender mainstreaming across all different spheres, because right now it's happening in silos, and this top-down approach can actually help bind these silos together. So why land ports? Land ports operate as key gateways for trade with neighboring countries. However, the impediments faced by women at the land ports are a major reason for the low level of female participation in regional trade. And the most important is that the initiative and willingness to mainstream gender at land ports was very forthcoming. And this is why we worked on land ports. And when we had this webinar with the Land Port Authority of India, and and we heard the impediments that women faced, Mr. Mishra was so convinced that this was an issue that really needed to be addressed, and he made an announcement saying land ports in India will be made gender friendly in 3 years. And the Economic Times carried that as a story, saying Chairman, Land Port Authority of India makes this announcement. And it was documented, and we were able to take this story to different, not only to different agencies within India, but also in multilateral forums. In fact, when I mentioned this at the World Economic Forum, they were so impressed with India's initiative that, in fact, I came across UPS at the forum, and Penny Naz was mentioned that they would fund something that India was doing in this area, and that's how we started the study, and we had complete support from Mr. Mishra, and so that's how this happened. The key contribution of the study, because what we found was that when we developed this analytical framework and we met with respondents at different land ports, we found the first 15 minutes we spent talking about what gender mainstreaming is, talking about what it means to use a gender lens, and taking them to every infrastructure element and saying, how can a gender lens be used? And we found that they were very interested in understanding what it means. And so this actually became a sensitization exercise. This could also be a very useful reference guide for other agencies, as Mr. Mishra just mentioned, that are involved in trade facilitation and adopting a gender mainstreaming approach, both within India as well as in other developing countries. And through this analysis, of course, then we tried to come up with a set of recommendations. Now, safety setup, cargo handling, and digitization. In step 2, we undertake a gender lens assessment, in which we are looking at basically first the infrastructure, the 6 categories. We look at the availability of infrastructure, and then we also look at the quality. And when we're looking at the quality, we're looking at accessibility, we're looking at maintenance, performance, and efficiency. We've also looked at the workforce with the gender lens, through a gender lens, where we've looked at diversity. And when looking at diversity, we've tried to look at the total number of women staff at the land ports. And we've also looked at the proportion of women staff in every agency at the land port. In addition, we've also conducted a qualitative assessment of land ports as workplace. Then in the final stage, we've actually looked at the impact, gender impact, and we've got the type of gender impact, which could be either facilitating or constraining. So if it is facilitating, then it has to be, if it's available and of good quality, it could be gender positive, or it could be gender neutral. So gender positive is something like, if there is a redressal mechanism for sexual harassment, it's a gender positive measure. Gender neutral, if there's a four-lane highway, it's gender neutral. It would affect both men and women similarly. Then we could have constraining factors, which means that either they are lacking or of poor quality. And here we could have gender intensified constraint, or we could have a gender specific constraint. So when it's a gender intensified constraint, basically we're looking at the impact on, what we're saying is that the impact on women is greater. And if it is gender specific, then we're saying that it specifically affects women. So if it's unhygienic toilets, then it is affecting women more. And then of course, both of these combine to have to create an impact either on mobility, in the sense that it would impose a mobility constraint, or it could negatively impact well-being, or it could increase the transaction costs, or it could negatively impact safety. Now, in the approach to the study, we selected 12 land ports. 4 of them were ICPs and 4 were LCSs, land custom stations. And we selected Doki, which was, during the study, it got upgraded to an integrated checkpost. So we were able to capture the transformation that happened through this time period. We conducted field visits in person as well as virtual consultations, and then there were follow-up interviews. Well, there were 2 sets of female stakeholders, users of land ports, and we also had providers at the land ports, which was basically different agencies that were operating out of the land ports. Now, the main findings. So this is basically on the availability. What we find is that basically the integrated checkposts score much higher than the land custom stations, and none of the land ports surveyed actually had a maximum score of 57. So all of them fell short of the maximum possible score. We found that there was a significant variation in the availability of infrastructure elements across the 6 categories. But on basic facilities, the score was pretty high. 94% of the infrastructure elements under this category were available. Even on safety setup, the score was high. But on the other hand, the average score for information and access to the port category was only 25%. On staff diversity, as we can see that the proportion of women across the ICPs is quite low, the maximum being at Atari, followed by Agartala and Rixaul. And if you look at the agency-wise distribution, we find that actually most of the women were in the security agencies, and followed by Land Port Authority of India. Now, some qualitative insights. What we found was that there were very few women users who actually visit the land ports for trade-related activities. In fact, at Petropol, what we found was that out of 400 registered CHAs, there wasn't a single woman. And most women CHAs actually operated out of Kolkata, and they would send their male counterparts to the land port. And women were actually employed and preferred to undertake tasks such as filing of e-documents, because they also said that women don't make mistakes, they're very diligent, and they do the e-documentation very carefully. A dedicated website for each of the land ports, which is the case with seaports, where all information is available, whether it is procedures or whether it is tariffs, the kind of official charges that are there. The vessel situation, in this case it would be the truck situation. Similarly, on basic utilities, what we found was even though they were available, the impact was more in terms of non-functionality of these basic utilities. And I think the most important thing that we found was that electricity, I mean, it is so basic. Even though electricity was available everywhere, electricity was very intermittent, and there was a reliance on power backup. On public facilities, again, they were lacking, especially in terms of healthcare facilities or baby care facilities and toilets. In fact, one woman we came across who said, that was in Moray, and she said she had a 1-year-old baby and she took that baby to work every day. She took an auto because there was no public transport. So that really, kind of encapsulated the challenges that she was facing. And this was very important because in the course of the survey, we actually came across women who were on maternity leave. So this would have meant that those are the kind of problems that they would face when they came back to work.
Stakeholder here in the room, what can be done better? And where are we today? Where do we have to go? So this is going to be a very insightful conversation about some of the lessons learned. And please, you can sit down. You don't have to stand a little bit longer. But first of all, I am thrilled. We have woman power here in full force. Let's give a round of applause to Professor Nisha and her all-woman team of researchers. If I can ask all these co-authors and researchers, please to get up and just show who you are. You were part of the report. Don't be shy, you contributed to the success. Can I ask you to please just to stand up for everyone to see you? My name is Christina Struller. I'm the Vice President of UPS for Corporate Affairs. And I have the pleasure to visit India many times this year already. And I'm here today with my team, Dinka Singh and Caroline Kiunga, as we have several meetings going on. If you don't know what is UPS, UPS is the world leader when it comes to logistics. We are serving more than 220 countries and territories around the world with more than 500,000 UPSers. We are excited to be here, and as well I would like to recognize one of our key partners here in the room, which is Interglobe Enterprises. Ragini, my friend and partner here with her team are here, and Interglobe is a very important partner to UPS. Let me tell you why, because last year, 1 year and 1 month ago, Interglobe Enterprise and UPS joint venture and created a domestic leader in logistics for B2B called Movin. That's all I want to talk about UPS today. And now it's really about the panel. Gender equality has been a fundamental and foundational issue that we at UPS have consistently strived to address. Supporting women is one of our top priorities, and our partnership with ICREER for this report is an important way in which we can advance our purpose to deliver what matters. A big thank you goes to Professor Nisha and her outstanding team for all the efforts and all the time they have invested to produce such a solid and important report that not only sheds light on the challenges, but as well shares recommendations to overcome the barriers that might hinder women in India to fully take advantage of international trade. And maybe just before, when we actually had some remarks from Ms. Matthew, I think one of the things as well took away is gender should not be the subject of the conversation. And I hope sooner than later that we get there. The issue of gender equality has been discussed and acted upon in many countries, but much of the focus is rightly here on labor, social and local policies. Renewed attention needs to be given how trade impacts gender, and conversely, how gender impacts trade. Business can be a great equalizer because when we help women succeed, they help the economy succeed. And as my colleague Caroline Kiunga said, there is no empowerment or women empowerment without economic empowerment. And why do I say this? As per the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, the MSME sector in India employs over 100 million people and contributes around 6.11% of the manufacturing GDP and 24.63% of the GDP from service activities. However, women run fewer than 13% of India's small businesses, and that's an issue. But consider this, according to McKinsey Global, India can potentially add $700 billion to global GDP by increasing women's participation in the labor force. So when women in India succeed, we all succeed. In India, we see women entrepreneurs are often concentrated in export-oriented sectors like apparel, textiles, retails, and manufacturing. And it's here that India's land ports play a significant economic role of assimilating the country's economic and regional development into the global economy. So gender mainstreaming in India's land ports assumes a larger significance for equal opportunities and exponential growth. It's extremely encouraging to see the policies and initiatives that the government of India has supported to recognize and encourage women to participate in India's economic growth. As Prime Minister Modi says, we cannot achieve success if 50% of our population being women are locked at home. A major thrust area the government has been to nurture women entrepreneurs through financial support, skilling and training. Nari Shakti is truly an unstoppable force if we can support the mainstreaming into these key trade gateways. That's also why this report and dialogue is so important for us at UPS. We are committed to supporting the growth of women businesses since 2018, and we have been providing capacity building, opportunities, knowledge sharing, and networking opportunities. Some of the things Nisha was just highlighting earlier, how critical those are. And we have funding and advocated for laws and regulations that ensure that as well there are no barriers left when it comes to those for women to thrive, run the businesses, and access global markets. And I'm very happy today that one of my friends, actually, Ms. Sushma, is here with us today because we launched the first Women Exporters India program last year. Actually, we reached out last year, we started this year, and we have now 500 women entrepreneurs being part of this program across India. It's an amazing program that helps us to upskill women, give them the right tools to access global markets. And together, we are working towards a more equitable and sustainable environment for those businesses, and I'm really fortunate to have you here today. So what's also important to consider is that gender mainstreaming is a far-reaching imperative that touches knowledge and capacity building, infrastructure safety, personal facilities, professional opportunities, and a seat at the table for women involved in trade. And so let's understand from our outstanding experts here today on the impact of inclusiveness for trade, when gender mainstreaming means at India's key land ports, and what gender mainstreaming actions should look like. I'm going to join now, and as well we have virtually our guest, Mr. Francesco, who will be talking to us from, where are you, Francesco? Can you hear us?
Yes, Tanya, I'm the Director General of India SME Forum. We are a not-for-profit organization by constitution, founded in 2011 May. Since then and now, we have 98,000 direct members across India who are MSMEs, and of these, around 7,000 plus are women entrepreneurs. We are present in 19 states, and we have 9 lakh MSME subscribers. When I say subscribers, these are not paid members, but these are members who are associated with India SME Forum on various platforms. They are our social media platforms, they are our regular conferences, seminars, and various other modes and outreach that we do to these MSMEs. And yes, we do lot of initiatives, lot of work in the area of boosting entrepreneurship and creating a robust entrepreneurial ecosystem for the entrepreneurs of India. And if I was to, in one word, describe gender mainstreaming, I would say missing. So, yeah, so it's missing at the designing the path myself, so I want other women to come and join the path.
You bring the chair to the table. Mr. Rashani?
Hi, good afternoon. Trained 3,000 women entrepreneurs from Southwest Asia, which have now gone to ASEAN and Africa. We have created a network of 2,000 plus women entrepreneurs through a Facebook group. We have landed them onboarding into the Facebook business on the e-commerce platform, as well as on Instagram and others. So basically what we are training them is how they can do the business by sitting at home. So if you ask gender mainstreaming to, in one word, it's very difficult, because mainstreaming of gender in Southwest Asia, where I look at, and if you look at SDG 5, we are far behind the SDG target. And therefore, it needs to mainstream women in economic, in environment, why they cannot be participating in climate change. And then social. COVID has brought a lot of change. Unpaid care work has increased. The women has to work more and more for non-paid economy. All these will fall under gender mainstreaming. Thank you.
Absolutely, and if it would be easy, then, you know, we at least wouldn't have the conversation any more longer. So we have to make it easy, Dr. Rashan. Over to our virtual panels. Over to you, Sudeep.
Hi, Good evening, and first let me thank Professor Nisha Taneja and her team for taking out this report. I remember the first time they did this webinar, which is still on YouTube, and thereafter we have been interacting, and then now the report's coming up, so it's a feel-good factor. My name is Sudeep Dey. I am a custom broker. In Calcutta, we have about 350 odd custom brokers, and these 350 odd custom brokers, we have an association which is called the Calcutta Customs House Agents Association, CCHAA, which I'm representing today. And we have 30 such custom brokers association pan India, which again goes on to form a national apex body, which is called FFAI, Federation of Freight Forwarders Association in India. I am the president of Calcutta Custom House Agents Association, and I am a vice chairman. We have 6 vice chairmen in the national apex body. I am one of those 6 vice chairmen in the national apex body. And thank you again for inviting me here. And if we talk about gender mainstreaming, my idea is to make the stream gender equal or gender neutral, and then bring women into the main position in the stream. So to do that, we have to make certain subtle changes. We don't have to go through huge changes, but subtle changes which we have to make, and we have to give women more confidence to come out into the stream and then go on to the mainstream, and then we have a better economy. So as far as gender mainstreaming is concerned, this is what I'm looking at. A good environment for both genders to work side by side. Thank you.
I think it's what Ms. Matthew earlier said as well when it comes to there's many qualified women out there, but we have to make sure that as well the environment is right for them actually to showcase their qualities. Thank you. Over to you, Francesco.
Hi, thanks, and good morning Fortin to us. And I think the value of the report, as we will discuss later, and its applicability goes well beyond India. So thanks for that. As far as I'm concerned, the Asian Development Bank, gender mainstreaming and women's empowerment is the core of what we do. The importance is to integrate this concept, these approaches within the country partnership strategy, including the country partnership strategy with India, which is our contract with Government of India, the lending operation, which is multi-million dollars, the grants and the technical assistance. To simply not to repeat what's been said before, just to throw a couple of concepts that are really emerging globally as applicable also to the context of India. One is the concept of intersectionality. So it's just not about women. It is about the concept of exclusion and vulnerability, disability, old age, sexual orientation and gender identity. And of this concept, so the complexity of gender mainstreaming is becoming more complex. So we need to keep in mind the intersectionality, addressing the needs of diverse women population. So gender intersectionality is a key emerging word, and I think we will discuss it later, a little bit more later. So thanks very much for this opportunity and for bringing a little bit more color to the concept of gender mainstreaming.
Thank you, Francesco. Let's dive into the questions. Let's start with Dr. Rasha. As an advisor and expert, you have seen firsthand the impact on capacity building for women entrepreneurs. In India especially, we have seen the power of providing them with the tools, techniques, and opportunities that can help them scale up and connect to global trade opportunities. Yet, women entrepreneurs lack access to training and information, as we as well have seen earlier by the report launch. So Dr. Rashan, do you think that access is the only issue? What are the other avenues of capacity building which can be key action points for gender mainstreaming?
Thank you, Christina. How much time I have to answer this question?
I will give you 3 minutes. 3 minutes are yours.
Isn't fine. I will try to do it in 3 minutes. See, in terms of access, rather I would like to go knowledge and capacity is one of the important things which are essential for gender mainstreaming. And when you talk with that knowledge in terms of access, then the issue of market access, in the issue of digital connectivity, even within India or when we are working in Southwest Asia. The digital divide between the country and within the country is too much. And we went to the rural areas of training women entrepreneurs. They do not have access to a smartphone, or they do not have even an internet connection going to the village. So there are a lot which is required at the government level. There are a lot which is required at agencies like us who are in between. And there is a lot which requires to be done between the women entrepreneurs. Trade finance is another one, right? So there are many issues, but I would put them all into the knowledge, who, where, what, how, which can address in a very comprehensive manner as a systemic method, then it will do. The second is also for gender mainstreaming is the mentality. And I will narrate a story in 1 minute. We were training women entrepreneurs for South Asia, and we were doing it in Bangladesh. And always we encourage women to narrate their stories. One woman said that when I went to bank for financing, and I'm talking about Bangladesh where the whole concept of microfinancing started. And she said, when I went to the bank manager first day asked, madam, very good, come have tea. Oh, where is your husband? And she said, I didn't understand what he is talking about. I said, no, he is doing a job, he is there. So he said, okay, why don't you come next day? I went again next day and he said, why don't you come with your husband? And then she said that it struck to me that he is not able to recognize that independently I can do my business. You are working in Indian subcontinent, I work in South Asia. How many women have all the properties on their hand? Is whether with the name of the son or a husband. Where does he go as an entrepreneur to do the collateral? So it's a mindset also which required to be changed. I will leave it there for the time being.
Absolutely good points, and we come back to those. Thank you. Sushma, over to you. As a key trade facilitator for India's women entrepreneurs, you helm a key role at the India SME Forum. The Women Exporters Program is an important capacity building and training program that we run together for female entrepreneurs across India who want their businesses to grow and who want to access new markets. What are some of the issues you hear from the women when you speak to them directly, especially when the business requires them to interact with India's key trade gateways and as well land ports?
Thanks, Christina.
You know, when you talk about cross-border business, what is cross-border? Who were the first ones to even start cross-border business? They were first explorers, then the traders who went exploring and started barter and then started trading, business, and so on. You know, when you say trader, when you say merchant exporter, when you say explorer, what comes to our mind? Is it even a gender neutral term? It's not. You know, we always think about it's a man. All these terminologies that we use, they all identify or they are synonymous with a man. I'll tell you my experience, my personal experience as an exporter before I started or founded India SME Forum, and that was primarily also the reason I founded India SME Forum. I was handling a media and an advertising business. I was part of it, and then it so happened that one of my uncles had this control gear and switch gear business. Because of his health reasons, I had to go and help him. Without any knowledge of even E of electrical business, I went, and it was a 100% export-oriented unit that he used to run. And let me straight away jump to, I mean, I did struggle a lot to get to the, get the strings in my hand about that business. The first consignment of those, feeder pillars, those small cubicles, it had to go to Muscat. And I said I will go to the port, and I told my driver, let us follow the truck. This was way back in 2008, 2009. Our factory was near the border of Pune, and we have to go to Nhava Sheva, which is JNPT. It's about 2.5 hours. It took me, like when I started, I said I'll follow my driver will follow the truck. We went 3 hours. It
In 3 hours, there were some 2 or 3 checkpoints. There are no, now at least there are some utilities and some facilities. There was no bathroom, no toilets. When you reach the JNPT entry point, from there to the actual port, there are no signages, the roads were bad, you don't even know which place you have to go. And it so happened that I actually lost the truck. We didn't know, the driver actually lost the truck. And we had no clue where to follow. And mind you, there was no Google at that time. Okay, we didn't have the maps. So it was so difficult to get in touch, and I thought we will reach there in time. We started at 2 o'clock. I mean, we reached there at about 6. And when we reached there with the truck, I found the truck, and it was 6 o'clock, and they said, ma'am, it closes at 5 o'clock, you can't go inside. So the truck has to wait outside. I have to pay the rent for the truck for that day because the material cannot be downloaded. I go back without using the bathroom, okay, and I go back to Pune, so it's about 6-7 hours. You go back. Next day, he says, come at 10 o'clock. So I go again, I reach somehow, I find out there, and then I am told that you need to take a shipping bill first. You will get a shipping bill, and then the officer will come and examine the contents of your truck, and those things then they will be laid on the container. I said, very well. Whole day, I kept on seeing somebody, there was this officer, people used to come, this guy was doing his work, people used to come, stamp something across the table and then stamp it and then go. Then again some agent would come, stamp and go. And I'm like asking, what's wrong? Why, can you please finish mine? Can I get the shipping bill? Can I get the He says, wait. And you won't believe, Christina, I was the only woman there in I don't know how many thousands of men around there, but I was the only woman there. No toilets, no safety, no canteen, no proper roads, nothing absolutely. Okay? What would have happened, God knows. It was at the risk of maybe getting molested or...
You just don't tell them export because of the sake of export.
Yeah.
We know when more women export, they hire more people for their companies. They make higher revenues. They're giving back to the communities. They reinvest in health and infrastructure in their families. So it's a win-win-win. So it just makes sense. Sudeep, you play a key role as a facilitator between companies and the authorities. Women entrepreneurs face numerous issues ranging from access to information to lack of presence of infrastructure, which humors their business and overall involvement in India's courts. These can in turn lead to compliance gaps. What are the challenges you have seen women entrepreneurs face regarding compliances, and how can these gaps be addressed?
So I think this question coming after the question of Madam Shushma, so I think she has answered it before I could answer it. So exactly this is what happens when you do not know what comes after the next. Even we are talking about 2009, 2010, even if she had learned the export and she had gone through the training for the export documentation and the export process, she would have had to face the same thing. So what I'm saying is there is a difference between the theory and what actually goes down in practical life. So, and that is why people would hire a custom broker, a person like me, a company like me. And I would also say that she would have to go the same thing if she had gone to fight her own case in a court. She would have had to go face the same thing if she would want to place, instead of being hiring a chartered accountant, if she would have to place her returns herself. So every industry has a certain service provider. So and that is why we employ these service providers. But having said that, it is a fact that there was rather a lack of information, and why women, even if a man had to do this same thing, he would have also faced the same issues. So
Come here to receive somebody, so nobody hired her. She went the second day again, nobody hired her, and then somebody realized that yes, there was a woman taxi driver, so she managed to get one. She used to wait for 5 to 6 hours and there was no ladies' toilet, as you rightly said. So finally they managed, she put up a note and said, listen, I'm a taxi driver and somebody needs to have a toilet for me here also. And so she managed to get a toilet. She runs a company now called Hey Didi, where she only employs women. And further than the employing women, she encourages more women to come in. How does she do this? So she has these women, and every year she calls the mother-in-laws of these ladies who are her drivers, and has the event where she gives away these big mixers or juicers and things like that. And so these ladies go back home and say, where did you get this? You know, my daughter-in-law, she works and I got this as a present. So they encourage their other, why are you sitting in the house? Please get out and see where she's working. So I think, mentoring in this kind of a manner and the way she did it with her 3 sons, I mean, heads off to us. The only thing she knew she did it, and this is where she created such a huge company, and she now caters to Amazon. Little vans that she's using, which you see them all over Bombay or India today. So I personally feel a lot of women mentoring, and your role models that you look up to, that who do I look up to and I want to become like this, or achieve what this lady has done, is what I would think the next thing for ladies.
Love it. Very, very powerful mentorship and role modeling. I think mentors as well. I mean, it's great to have female mentor expertise which help the woman as well. Francesco, over to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role at ADB is playing in the area of logistics and warehousing at India's land ports that can facilitate cross-border trade opportunities for the women entrepreneurs here in India?
Thanks very much. So to be very succinct, what I just wanted to say is that I think what I heard today reminds us that it's a collective effort. So the Multilateral Development Bank, what do? We build on Government of India's commitment as it is manifested in different laws, regulations, and schemes and programs the other colleague just pointed out in the round of comments. What we've done in, I think it was the year 2000 and basically 21, there was a $500 million loan to Government of India on strengthening multimodal and integrated logistic ecosystem programs. So big title. But under the big title, and because of the commitment to gender equality and social inclusion, there were 2 sub-programs, and within the sub-program, some policy action. Policy actions are basically actions you need to abide by in order to release the funds. And for one, there was the commitment to develop a framework to assess female labor force participation in the organized warehousing sector. And this condition is being met. But coming up, there is a second commitment to develop a strategy to increase women's visibility in the sector. So these 2 policy actions are the least, in my opinion, that an organization such as the World Bank or the ADB can do in order to leverage on Government of India's commitment to gender equality, social inclusion. So beyond that, an area that I keep hearing that in my opinion we could do better, and I look at you also, Christine, as a private sector person, is really promote cross-fertilization of experience between Women Chamber of Commerce or Association of Women Entrepreneurs in the same region. We tried, it's complex, it's political, there are different platforms, SARC, SASEC, but I think it's an area that we owe to the women's movement and to those who are still struggling. Obviously, as hearing, just looking at Shamila right now, I can only echo the sense of achievement, but also the sense of persisting frustration in ensuring that cross-fertilization happens. So to conclude, and how to sustain that, I take advantage of 30 seconds, Christina, basically to respond to a question that will not be asked. But what are the imperatives to make gender mainstreaming success even in the logistics sector? Political commitment, we heard the institutionalization of the practices, we heard in the logistics and warehousing sector, and with the potential of leapfrogging. I don't know, I'm sorry if I disagree with some of the participants. Yes, incremental changes are very important, but what I see today is a bunch of highly motivated, capable men and women who can perhaps think about leapfrogging, beyond incremental changes. Capacity building, the colleague pointed it out time and time again. Data and evidence speaks very high, even when it's bad. participation and consultation, and I think Rajan pointed out, very important, coordination and collaboration, as long as it's feasible, even with the private sector, which is non-controversial, and with civil society as feasible, monitoring and evaluation, policy integration, awareness, advocacy, and last but not least, sustainability and long-term commitment. So on all of these areas, I think we all share the pain, and as multilateral development banks, we need to hear you out as practitioners, as government, as civil society and private sector to do better. So for me, we can leapfrog a bit, but totally committed to incremental changes as feasible. Over to you, Christina.
Thanks, Francesco. And Sudeep, your last one on technology. Technology can be able to address issues of fast tracking, compliance, and physical presence. Are there some of the best practices we might think of based on other port facilities which we can adopt in order to overcome those challenges?
We had put 2 or 3 recommendations. One was, we had recommended that the ICP themselves employ more women for other people, for the trade with more women to come in. For example, if women from the trade goes to the ICP and they see that the ICP do not employ more women, it is a little bit of a discomfort to them. That's number one. Number 2 is we had also suggested that you used more mechanized way of loading, unloading, and which in his speech he said that yes, they're working towards it, and basic improvement of the environment. By improvement of the environment, I don't mean cleanliness only, but basic the people around, the way they talk, the way language they use. When you have a lot of laborers on the ground floor, there is a lot of slang language that is being used, which is also not good for the environment, where any women, forget women, where I would also not be comfortable working. So all these environment cleanup is necessary, but I think LPI and the Petropol is one of the best, and digitalization, once they come up with more and more digitalization, for example, the parking digitalization which they have come up with, it is just fantastic, and it was magic, where trucks would have had to wait as long as 45 days. I think the maximum was 45 days, and suddenly overnight it has just vanished. So, and we are also confused, surprised, and as to how this has happened. But it was just magic which they have done. And even if you have digital processes, nothing can substitute the fact that once or twice in a month you have to go down to the ground level and see for yourself what is happening, just to get the idea. So we, as Sharmila said, training is very much important. We can get ladies, women folk to get trained, and as an association like us or a think tank like ICR-IER, we can fund these training. We can fund this training from the CSR of these multinational companies, the CSR fund they have. They can use these to fund the training of these ladies. I think that would be a great idea and a great step. And we from FFI, we are always there. We have, as Sharmila also stated, we have a women's wing, but the women must be coming forward. We have taken the first few steps. They must take the next few steps. And then I think we'll have a great journey ahead.
Great point, thank you, Sudeep. And I think it comes back to what Ms. Matthew was mentioning as well. Everyone should be treated as a human being, right? It shouldn't be, if it's not right for the woman, most likely it's not right for the man either. And I think when it comes to CSR funding, there's a lot of work we're doing with the foundation. It really comes back to using those monies to create impact, and create impact through education, through capacity building, through upskilling the workforce, and empowering women. Minutes, please.
That
We're
is a
just
question
running
which
a
I
bit
was
over
waiting,
time.
and I will take time.
2 minutes time, right?
No, you gave me 3 minutes, I adhered to it. Second, you didn't give me, I still took 6 minutes. Now this I will speak, right? The single or a 2-word solution in terms of mainstreaming gender in trade facilitation, if you ask me, is this. paperless, contactless regime if you can develop. I do not agree. I mean, I compliment Nisha for these studies and bringing it out. How many people were there in the government in ICT and LCDs? I don't want any one of them. I don't know how many of you have gone to ICDs and LCDs and looked at their conditions. I have visited many, you know, and it's certain places are gender neutral. Even when I wanted to do, I won't say which place I went. It took me half an hour to bloody locate a decent toilet where I need to go and pee. Forget about women. Now, the solution to this is why somebody you expect to go to a difficult terrain and to a remotest area where there is no good condition of living. You cannot get a house on rent. You do not get uninterrupted electricity. You do not have an ICT connectivity, and you want a woman to shift there to work in LCD in the government, and then you want a women entrepreneur to go there just to get her clearance? Sorry, come on. If that is what we are looking for gender mainstreaming, I am not in. For me, gender mainstreaming is if she's a women entrepreneur, she sits in her office. 80% of the custom is digitalized. It's only these LCDs, ICDs which require infrastructural support. I went to Dawki last year and I was there. Sikkim to Dawki is only 76 kilometers. It takes 3 hours to reach it. It takes for the truck 6 hours to cross the border from Sikkim. You want a women entrepreneur to follow that? 6 hours to go there? It's now it's ICD, 4th of May, that's now. If you really want to bring the change in this, what we did, and I'm taking pride, in 2012 we came out with a faceless in-DGFT regime. We had a platform where every banking transaction of exporter used to come and link into our system because people were getting deemed export benefits, people were getting advanced authorization benefits, people were getting different benefits. So there is no need for a bank certificate. Overnight, the visitors of exporters coming to DGFT lie down to virtually zero. You don't require it. Can we have that kind of regime at all these interactive phases in the government? Why not? If you really want to mainstream the gender, I would say, why don't you have a reservation system for the women in CHA? Why 30% of the women in the CHA should not be women? Make a test. In the BPO industry, 40 to 45% women are working in the software industry, working 24/7 in the night. Why she cannot? For all of these prescriptions, there are different solutions. So I will not go whether you require knowledge, you require capacity building, you require stakeholders. But I think the day you can equip a woman to file her shipping bill of lading, banking transactions through sitting in mobile, you are done with it. You don't need anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to the day.
I'm sorry, I speak by my mouth.
No, but we love, that's what we have you on the panel because we want to learn from you, and it was very, very insightful. Thank you so much, Dr. Rashan. Thank you, Dr. Shamila. Thank you, Sushma. Thank you, Sudeep and Francesco. What a wonderful conversation, what a wonderful event, what an impactful report, and very insightful conversations which we definitely take to the next level, because I think everyone here made great points complimenting the report which was launched today. So while IQVIA has spoken from land border all in a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, Christina. I just wanted to make one statement, which I think is kind of a while ago in the previous session, Ramaji said that our government is gender neutral and it's a wonderful place for women officers to work. But I would really want to urge these women officers to also take a perspective from a woman's angle when they are making policies, because that is where gender mainstreaming will be in its true form. That's my request to these women officers.
In fact, conversation very insightful, and I'm still trying to absorb all that was said in the last 1 hour 15 minutes. It was really brilliant, and a lot of good suggestions have come out. It seems like a study in itself, So that's how useful this conversation was. And this conversation can actually go on. None of us is in the mood to close it, but unfortunately, all good things have to come to an end. So we'll have to close this session, but I would like to thank you, Christina, thank all the panelists, especially those who've come from outside, those who joined us online and made the time and made these very insightful comments. And thank you to all the participants here who have come and listened to all of us so patiently. Thank you, and some of you have actually come from outside. Thank you, Dolly, for coming all the way from Doki, because Doki was extensively covered and it's been a very important part of our conversation. Thank you, UPS, for partnering with us and bringing this to a successful conclusion. Thank you, all of you.
So very good. I'm from Germany. And I spent a lot of time in India. I have never been there.